Dow Watch Fireside, episode 3. This time I had the head honcho from Dash Incubator, a guy called Rion Gull. We had a really in-depth chat. Felt like it could go on for ages, but we really got into the nuts and bolts of actually working with a DAO, and not only any DAO, but possibly the first DAO as we know it today. So Dash has the first DAO with a treasury, with voting that all token holders, well, all masternode owners can participate in. And it's a DAO close to my heart as it introduced me to the concept of DAOs and a lot of other crypto OGs, as we're known. So yeah, enjoy this. We got a lot of talk from Rion about how he works within the DAO and also what it means to him, how he gets people into the DAO, into his incubator, and how he fosters development and productivity. He's a great guy and it's a great episode. So enjoy DAO Watch episode 3. Hello and welcome to Dow Watch Fireside, episode number 3. And I am beyond excited to be joined by one of the OGs in the DAO space, one of the longest serving DAO builders, Rion Gull. And I'm actually getting his name correct because the last time we was on a video together, I was calling him Rion, which I don't know where I got that name from, but Rion Gull from Dash. Now, I'm going to give you a brief introduction. Rion is, I'm going to call him the head honcho. I know he likes to be more modest than I am, but Rion is the head honcho at Dash Incubator. And he's one of the guys who actually works with DAOs and actually works within DAOs and actually onboards people into DAOs. And the reason why I'm really excited to have him on is because, in my humble opinion, the Dash Incubator is one of, if not the best working spaces within DAOs. So, Rion, delighted to have you here. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, a lot of some of my friends used to call me Rion or Rion or all sorts of fun pronunciations because it's R-I-O-N. So I just figure that's a sign of friendship. So good to be here, and yeah, happy to talk DAOs.
Awesome. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Dash is one of the longest, probably the original DAO with a treasury. I don't know, Rion. Do you know of a DAO with a treasury that predates Dash? I don't know of any.
I do not. I don't think there.
So the only other argument is a technicality whereby some people call Bitcoin itself a DAO.
Right.
I would say those people are really reaching. They're really stretching. Yeah. Right. So, Rion, what was your first experience within crypto and DAOs? How did you find this wonderful space?
Yeah, like a lot of the people who've been around for more than a decade or so, obviously the first place that you landed was Bitcoin. That's where I landed. And I was researching, I don't even know if I would say researching, but I came across one of Amanda B. Johnson's videos from the Daily Decrypt, and she was talking about different projects in the cryptocurrency space. And I discovered Dash, and the DAO part of Dash was one of the most interesting things about it as I researched longer and longer, because to me, that's the only way that cryptocurrency as a whole will actually be sustainable, is if people start working for the cryptocurrency and earning money in that same cryptocurrency. So it's more of an economy than just a monetary instrument. And that's one of the things that I've learned over the years, is that you can't have a sustainable cryptocurrency without a sustainable economy. And so you have the capital part, and then you have to also have the labor part. And it's the marriage of those two that really make a cryptocurrency more than just a cryptocurrency token or coin. It makes it an actual economy. And so that's what was interesting about Dash to me.
So with Dash and it being an economy, the main thing which people really get stuck into when we talk about DAOs is the governance and the direction of this economy. With Dash itself, there has been some changes within its direction. The actual mission for Dash is to be digital cash. Now, I guess you agree with that. Is it is it possible or is it even appropriate that the community can change the mission statement for Dash? And do you think that's appropriate? And if so, how would you see something like that coming about? Or do you think it's something that shouldn't happen?
Well, changing the mission statement for a project is very difficult, but it can be done. We know that because we have evidence that it was done in what you were calling arguably the first DAO, which was Bitcoin. Bitcoin was originally a project that was aiming for and had a mission, right there on the title of the white paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash. And it changed the mission statement to be maybe institution to institution electronic gold, something like that, digital gold. So they pivoted away from their original mission statement, and they did it successfully. As long as you define success as being number go up, price go up, they did that successfully. As far as like whether Dash could do something like that, I've actually tried to do that to some extent. I've tried to change the mission of Dash to be, instead of just digital cash, which I like it to be digital cash, and I want it to be digital cash, but I've realized that you can't have the digital cash without a digital, or not a digital, but without a labor force supporting that digital cash. It's not, otherwise it's just going to be an asset that people speculate on. So I have tried to change it, and it's a little bit difficult, but it can be done. You have to be persuasive because this is all voluntary stuff. There is no head honcho in Dash itself. You could say that I'm the head honcho of the Dash Incubator. Even that is a stretch, but I understand that. And I don't consider the Dash Incubator itself to be a DAO. I consider the Dash ecosystem to be a DAO. But we could talk more about what DAOs are and my beef with those three letters if you want.
Yes, let's do it. Let's definitely do that. But before we do, actually, something you said there really something I'm not even aware of is, how did the Dash Incubator come about? Was it your idea? And if so, what was the necessity? What was the need for it? Why did you decide to build it?
I did not build it. It was started by Andy Freer, who's an ex Dash Core Group employee. He used to be the CTO of Dash Core Group, and for various reasons, he decided to create his own organization separate from that, and he called it the Dash Incubator. No, he actually called it the Dash Platform Incubator because one of his main projects was Dash Platform, and he wanted to be able to incubate different ideas for building on Dash Platform. We subsequently generalized it more to be the Dash Incubator and not just the Dash Platform Incubator. But I got involved. I was probably one of the earliest ones to get involved just because I loved the idea of having more of an open access way to work for Dash. So like from the very beginning of Dash's DAO, anybody can and has been able to submit proposals to be voted on by the stakeholders of Dash, which is the masternode owners. But it's kind of a difficult process, both technically and socially. And it takes somebody that has a strong reputation to be really considered, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But it's a difficult process to start in. And so if you wanted to work for Dash, you had two routes, basically. You could work for Dash Core Group, which is just a traditional corporation that has a traditional hiring process and interview process to get on board. And, that's always possible, but it's not exactly what I envision as the future of our economy. And then you could also take that other route where you just go alone. And so the incubator was something more like an in-between ground where there is some organization that's already established. But it's not like there's an interview process or a hiring phase where, okay, you're hired now. It's more like anybody can join freely, and you pretty much will get some work right away without any trouble. Whether that's just testing an existing app or writing a specification for an idea or creating a new concept or jumping in and fixing a bug or adding a feature to an existing project. There's a lot of different things that you can do in the incubator, and there's really no downside for us to just say, okay, here's 5 Dash if you can complete this task. Yeah. If they do it, great, then we give them more. If they can't do it very well, or if they personally find that it's not efficient for them, they can just quit and no harm, no foul. So
I just wanted to also delve into the structure of the Dash Incubator, because obviously the viewers or listeners won't really know. But as far as I'm aware, there are strategists, I believe they're called, and the strategists are in charge of various different, I guess maybe subsections of even the Dash Incubator. Now, to me, that also means that not only does somebody have to maybe appeal to what you think is a good idea, but there are other people who have got other strategies who they can also go to try to get funding. Now, when you came up with I don't know if it was you who came up with the idea of strategists, but this concept of strategists, was it mostly because you was trying to find better ways to onboard, or was it mostly because you wanted specialization in the people who you were onboarding and the people who were already within Dash Incubator? How did that almost separation between the people within the incubator also happen?
Yeah, it's a good question because it will be interesting to your viewers in general. I think because you have a general DAO audience, not just Dash people. And I think what's important is DAOs is finding the right balance between centralized and decentralized. And the strategist role was something that I came up with. It was a little bit of a tweak on an earlier role that we had that was more prominent, called an admin role. And I'll take a little bit of time to discuss those because I think it's important for all DAOs to understand this concept. Early on, it was basically like Andy was leading the show, but not in a leadership way. He was mostly just kind of like, he just started it, but and he got funding from the Dash DAO. But then after that, it was kind of a free for all where anybody could just be working on stuff, and then they were requesting funds for work that they'd been doing, and so it was kind of a little bit of a tragedy of the commons thing where everybody had full access to this not giant, but significant pot of money, and there was no real rail guards about like whether what they were doing nobody was responsible for it. So not even Andy, because he could just step back and say, I just get funding for the incubator, but it's up to the people to create value. And so he wasn't really responsible for the value or lack thereof created in a very explicit way. And so I think that was on the wrong side of the balance, of like far too decentralized, or anybody could basically have access to the funding, but not responsibility for it. And so the strategist role was like to say, okay, these people are a single person, a single point of contact, where any project that we're working on in the incubator, this person is responsible for these 10 projects because they've accepted them explicitly as valid projects into the incubator, and they're responsible for them. You couldn't have that like one person over the whole incubator with that. And so that's why we had multiple different strategists, each one being responsible for their 10 and their 10 projects. And so somebody in the community could say, hey, this project is, spending this much or doing X, Y, and Z. Who do I talk to? And there's a direct single point of contact. So it's a little bit more on the centralized scale of things for good reasons, I would say.
Yeah. Also, I think it also helps with the general DAO members in that some of the funding will be, I guess the general DAO members might not be qualified to know whether or not a person is capable of completing a task, whereby the incubator strategists will know. They'll say, okay, well, we need this level of technical know-how to get this done. It might be a question which probably doesn't suit the general DAO. So I feel like taking those votes away from people also in its own way helps. It also stops with photo fatigue and things like that. But you did allude to it earlier, so let's get into it. The 3-letter acronym DAO, and you seem to not actually like it. What is it about DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, that rubs Rion up wrong?
Yeah, I think it's just this first letter, decentralized, is I already spoke to it a little bit. I don't think that decentralization is a value in and of itself. It's only a value as it helps other things that are intrinsically valuable. So like nobody really cares. Like just take your average person on the street and say, hey, do you if you even ask the question, you'd be looked at kind of strangely. Do you value decentralization? It's like, no, I just want cool products and I want low prices and whatnot. And so decentralization has never really appealed to me as an end of itself. It's always supposed to just be a means to either security or efficiency or inclusion or whatever. So anyway, I would say the most important part of decentralization, what people typically mean by it, is more openness. Like anybody can participate, and there's a very simple prescribed way how you participate. But it also doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to, it's not socialism in the sense that like everybody's equally, everybody has equal access to equal funding or whatever you might want to think about that equality aspect, but just open aspect. So it's, and then autonomous is this weird word that nobody really knows what it means. Some people kind of interpret it as like automatic, like everything's automated and everything's like just a computer system and straightforward like that. Like there's no judgment involved. It's just automated process. And then other people think that it's more of like more autonomous. Like if I go to my boss and I say, hey, I want more autonomy, that basically just means like I want to be able to make my own decisions. So I do like that definition a little bit better, because the autonomous part, the automatic, like prescribed, everything is already coded up and automated. I don't like that part of it because that's just not how things work in the real world. There's always got to be some judgment by individuals involved. But if you're talking about like, people want autonomy. And so if that's what we're talking about, then I'm okay with that. And organizations is like, originally, I think they were decentralized autonomous corporations. It was the first kind of iteration of the whole thing, the whole idea. And I think people moved to organizations because they're like, well, we don't want it to be a corporation. So let's move away from that. And I think that was a good move, but I don't know. Like,
so really, I think I don't know if all of us people who joined crypto around the same time start to come to the same realizations around the same time. But I've also recently been thinking about this term of decentralization and being like a decentralization extremist as possibly not being helpful, whereby we decentralization, as you said, is a means to an end, and what you really want is the security that goes with it, the freedom and the autonomy and the voluntary aspect. So you are definitely showing your age within crypto with that answer, because that's something that I guess the newer DAOs and the newer people to crypto aren't really, they don't wrestle with those words as much as perhaps the people who have been here.
Yeah, you kind of, I think it is just a maturity thing, where it's kind of appealing originally. It's appealing at the surface level to say, everybody contributes value in the organization equally, and everybody can, we can all vote for the direction that we want to go and our mission statement. And it's like that idea can sound appealing to somebody who is marginalized from our traditional systems. But when you start to, and it is a valuable aspect to it in comparison to that, but when you start to actually work in these organizations and realize the problems that come along with that, giving everybody equal say in the organization, and just even trying to get input from every single person in the organization, even if you did want that, it's practically impossible and strategically not a good idea. So that's why I don't consider the Dash Incubator to be a DAO, but I do consider where Dash Incubator gets its funding from to be a DAO, because that one is very decentralized and very open access and equal accessibility. But once you get in the incubator itself, there is a hierarchy of sorts and there is a structure, and that's on purpose.
If there was to be another person come along to Dash and decide to build another incubator and call it the Dash Incubator 2.0, would you see that incubator as a competitor? Would you see it as an ally? Would you see it as a sister? How would you view a situation like that?
I would highly value that, actually, and that's actually what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to accomplish that from the incubator. So the incubator was originally designed to be something where it was incubating projects and ideas and trying to, get some startup funding for this idea. But the more I am doing it, the more I want it to be incubating teams and a workforce in general. And the success story for the Dash Incubator is not necessarily that we build a great project, like great products, although that is part of the mission. The most successful story is that somebody joins the incubator, say as a developer, they start working on tasks under a strategist, and then they realize, I actually can I have these ideas, and I think I'm adding enough value that I could be my own strategist, and I could just create projects on my own, from startup, from concept to specification to implementation, and I could do that whole process myself. And then realizing that, I don't even really need the incubator organization anymore. I can just rebrand and say, now I'm the Dash Incubator 2, or hopefully they choose a better name, like like Dash something out, even just its own name, right? Like that's the most successful story, and then competing on the same playing level as me to get funding from Dash. They're in competition to provide the most value, and that's actually the best outcome. So a good example of this is Shenmik, Mikhail, some Russian Chenikov or something. That's his last name, but he goes by Shenmik on the. He kind of has followed this path. He actually used to work for a Dash core group, and then he started working for the Dash Incubator as a developer under on my projects under me. And then and I encouraged him to say, I said, you should be a strategist on your own. And that basically means he's doing the same thing that I'm doing, by requesting funds directly from the from the Dash DAO and getting funding. And the only reason that he's still in the incubator is like he probably could have his own proposal, but I'm trying to get him to a point where he's comfortable doing that. And everybody's going to stop at the point that they want to. As far as I know, he doesn't have any reason that he wants to leave the incubator because he likes the fact that I do the payments and things like that. So there are still benefits to being in the incubator. But if he went off and he did his own proposal, I would consider that a success. And I want more of those people doing that.
When you said about the first person, I can't remember his name. I think you said his name might have been Stephen something, the guy who actually created the incubator. Was he a developer? And do you think that perhaps he didn't maybe have the personal skills that some, I guess, non-developers have? And that's why, although he built it, he might not have been the perfect person to oversee it. Whereas somebody who's maybe not a developer might have the personal skills. Do you think that might play a role in how Shenik, I'm going to butcher his name, Ryan was hard enough. Do you think that might be play a role? And do you sometimes consider that perhaps you could maybe not pair people up, but consider how they could be supported when starting their journey towards becoming a strategist?
I do think that there's a different skill set between developers and what I call strategists, which is basically like project managers, people. Yeah. Like people who have more people and managerial and organizational skills, and not just those, but actually most importantly, strategic skills. Like, what's the mission? What are we trying to accomplish? Digital cash, a digital economy. And what is your strategy for that? Is it building this app or is it building that app? And those are completely different skill sets than the skill set of actually building app A or B. Those are different. It's the question between how to build something. That's good. A developer can be good or bad at how to build something. But a more fundamental question is, what should we be building? What should we be building? And why should we be building it? And those are the questions. Like, actually, I think if I could get a little controversial here, Dash Platform, for example, right? Dash Platform is a product that is built primarily from Dash Core Group, and you could have the best developers, the absolute top-notch developers building that application. And let's say that we did, and I think we do have some great developers in Dash Core Group that are building that project, but that's kind of separate from or orthogonal to the question about whether we should have built that and how we should have built that. So should we have built that incrementally or one big thing after 8 years of work? Or should we have built it first, do a year long doing usernames that were at a certain level? Anyway, so the question about what kind of products to actually work on and how to release those is a question of strategy and not necessarily a question of developers' skill. So I think you asked earlier about Andy's role in that, the original person. Like, he was a developer, but he also did have good strategic chops. And I think that his decision to make the incubator was a good decision because it helped to have some competition for Dash Core Group. And whether we're not really working on the same projects. We do overlap a little bit. Like, we do work on some of their products to some degree, and the whole idea was to build on one of their products. And because it's taken so long to release, it has required us to kind of pivot, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, we can't build on Dash Platform if Dash Platform isn't built, and so we were relying on that, but we pivoted to other projects, and I think that was fine for me as far as I'm concerned, because Dash platform should not be the only product that we're banking our future on. So, for example, we're building a completely new wallet, a web wallet that I'm very excited about, because we'll be able to do integrations very quickly from here on out. We just released the first foundational parts of the wallet right now, so you can do sending and receiving. It has usernames. They're not globally unique usernames, but they're local, what I would consider even more decentralized username system than the Dash Pay application that's supposed to be built on Dash platform. So they're just alternative approaches and views about how to build a product, and whether those will have product market fit. That I think is healthy competition, whether that's incubator competing with core for value creation, or somebody that maybe started in the incubator that is moving on and doing their own thing. Like, for example, Joel was part of the incubator, and he then built the Dash Marketing Hub based on the incubator workflow. And then he realized, that wasn't quite right for him. And then he's doing Dash Growth. So that's another good example of successful competition to create value. And he's doing it in a completely different way. Like, he's not doing development work. He thinks that there's more value to be achieved by marketing and growth and business development efforts. And I agree with him that was a good move. So all of this kind of stuff is what makes DAOs valuable, because you can create healthy competition.
When you're working within Incubator and for Dash DAO, what would you say is the most challenging part of your role currently? What do you find hardest?
What I find hardest is the ability, like the challenge of attracting talent and retaining talent. It's a human resource role of recruiting. And it's not easy with the constraints that we have and the constraints that I personally set. So one of the constraints that I set, for example, is that all of our work is paid natively in Dash. And we don't give salaries. We don't say, here's your, $60,000 or $100,000 salary for the year, and we'll give you a paycheck every 2 weeks, no matter what you accomplish. That is not how we work in the incubator. We do more granular work that's tabulated more granularly. And if somebody is just like not motivated to work, or they don't find that they have other opportunities that are paying them better at the moment, then they work on those other opportunities. And then I have to kind of continually get their interest to work for Dash instead. And so working for Dash, one person might think that that's great, like they want to acquire cryptocurrency, but another person might think this is kind of a burden that I have to deal with, because now I'm not getting like cold hard dollars. I'm getting Dash, and then I have to jump through hoops to get it to pay my bills. So some people will view it differently, and just managing, like the human resources aspect. And we just don't have a lot of money to pay people. I know other people might disagree with that, but when you consider the lack of benefits and the lack of stability, both in terms of hours that we're able to give people, and we can't give them any kind of like insurance or health plans or none of that. Like, they don't get any of that. They just get either a task rate or sometimes hourly rates that tasks are based on. And that's not very attractive to some people. And so it's hard to make progress. So I would say, like, the biggest problem is we don't have a lot of funds to attract top tier developers. And so you have to find the person that has kind of like a little bit of a passion behind it as well. It's like a passion project. And then you can pay them a decent rate, but unless we had more funding, like we couldn't pay people to work full time. Like we have very few full time. I'm basically the only full time person in the Dash Incubator, and that's funding is tricky, and just human resource management.
So for you being full time within Dash, I guess the question I have is why? What is it about working for a DAO or working for Dash that keeps you coming back? Because as I guess people who are familiar with the resources or the human resources that we have within DAOs, it's almost 99% of everybody that's employed within a DAO could be employed somewhere else for more money. So what is the thing that keeps you coming back?
Yeah, it goes back to that vision and the mission thing. Just my ideology, as I want my main goal in life is peace and prosperity for everybody, and that's I've determined that we can't do that continuing to work for and propping up our traditional legacy financial systems, and that begins with not working for dollars. So to me, that's the motivation comes from your principles and values within. And I try to pay the bills, obviously, but it's not a huge amount of money for me. But yeah, it's the mission. So you have to, and I think that a lot of the developers that I'm working with share that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this because, like you say, they can go work for Stripe or some other corporation that has tons of VC funding, and that can offer them six-figure salaries, 150, $200,000 a year, plus all sorts of benefits and stability of both the finance, the currency that they're earning, and the hours that they can work. Like they get a lot more elsewhere. I wish it weren't that way, and maybe it won't be that way in the future if the rest of society starts to come on board and I hate to say pumps up the value of the cryptocurrency industry, but that's really what it boils down to: is the more people start putting their financial resources and savings into cryptocurrency, that's the sign that humanity is coming around to improving. And until that point, like we're not going to be a strong player in the industry. So
Recently, within Dash, there was discussion about Dash's own legal wrapper and the legal, I guess, entity of Dash and where it's established, where it's recognized under what jurisdiction X, Y, and Z. And there were some proposals put forward about where it should be staged and what was wrong with where it was staged before. What are your thoughts on the legal wrapper, not only of Dash, but of DAOs in general? And would you consider creating a legal wrapper for the incubator, for example, if one doesn't exist?
yeah, I am a voluntarist, however you want to say it. Or another word for that is an anarchist. I don't believe that legal systems have any moral legitimacy at all. And so I personally hate the idea of being a legal entity. It's like the permission slip, like you're in kindergarten and you have to get a permission slip to play on the playground of life and say, Daddy, Mommy, please, may I have permission to be a worker in this society? That's to me what a legal corporation is, and I understand the history of legal corporations that wasn't necessarily that, but that's what it is today. So I try to avoid it at all costs. I am not the Dash Incubator is not a legal entity. Everybody working for the incubator has the choice whether like how they want to interact with their political jurisdictions. I, for example, I'm forced to be a legal entity personally when I end up having to do my taxes. For example, I have to claim that I'm a legal entity regardless. Like they tell me I'm a legal entity whether I claim it or not. And so I do things on the up and up, and I don't break those laws because I have a wife and kids that they don't want to see me in jail, and I can't take care of my family, which is my primary obligation. And so I have to do those things, but you don't necessarily have to do everything that you're expected to do as an organization. So I leave that up to the individuals working for the incubator, how they want to deal with their own legal requirements. But yeah, like I don't encourage Dash Core Group. I think was the question that you asked. It was regarding Dash Core Group, or maybe it was the Dash DAO itself. And yeah, like I would rather have fewer legal entanglements than and not formalizing those kind of things. I would rather find other ways to do what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. Like what are we trying to accomplish with the legal wrappers in either Dash Core Group or the Dash DAO, or I think there is a legal wrapper around the Dash Investment Foundation, those kind of things. Like there is some kind of, it depends on what your goals are and what your constraints are. Like the Dash Investment Foundation, part of their reason for existence is to invest Dash and get equity in return. And you literally cannot do that without being a legal entity. And so from their perspective, their hands are tied in terms of that, like they have to be a legal entity. Dash Core Group, I think, is a little bit more, they could probably decide one way or the other. Dash Incubator has decided not to have a legal wrapper around the organization itself because we're just blockchain funded organization, and then we distribute funds and we leave the legal wrappers up to the individuals themselves. But yeah, I don't encourage it. But I also don't necessarily discourage it. People can do what they want to do. And as long as there's choices, that's what's most important.
So what I read from that is that you're prepared to accept being a legal entity yourself under duress, under the threat of violence, wherever it is you are in the world. When it comes to, you spoke earlier about your new web wallet and that almost being complete. Now, I guess, I don't know, the viewers may or may not know, but a web wallet often can be easily transitioned into becoming a mobile wallet because a lot of the technology underneath is very similar. So when you then decide to become a mobile wallet and you go to launch on Android, everything will be fine. When you go to launch on Apple, you're more than likely going to get hit with this same wall that, who are you? If you don't exist legally, we can't allow you. At that point, do you have to, I know it's a little bit down the line, but you probably have considered it already. Do you have to bite the bullet and register on something? Do you register a legal entity purely for the application, or do you look for other organizations within the crypto ecosystem who possibly have already registered a legal entity and all they do is accept people's apps and then push them to the App Store? What will be the strategy at that point?
Yeah, I haven't gone down that route of getting in the Apple App Store yet. We technologically we do plan on doing that by wrapping our web wallet into a framework that does create a native app that you could upload to the App Store. So technologically, that's on the roadmap. But when we get to that point, I don't know what's required from Apple, if you do need to be a legal entity or not. I haven't made that decision because some things are basically forced upon you, and so you have to do what you have to do. But in our case, we actually there are other technologies called progressive web apps where you don't have to be in the App Store. So you basically you tell your users, hey, go to this website, and when go to your website on the mobile phone, in the Safari browser on your mobile phone, and then click this button, and then it says add to homepage. And now you basically have an app that is on your phone, just like every other app that you downloaded from the App Store, but instead it's accessed in a different way. And so that you don't need the Apple App Store to get on somebody's Apple phone. I just actually, just before we got on the call, I was actually testing that exact same thing with our developer. And so I did those exact steps. I went to the website, and then I downloaded and I installed the app onto my home screen. And now it looks like every other app and functions just like every other app without having gone through the App Store. So that would be a good solution for us, and that was kind of the plans all along. And then also making it into desktop apps, same code base in 4 different platforms: web, desktop, Android mobile, and Apple mobile, from one code base. So that's been the strategy all along. There again, strategy. And I'd be happy if we stopped there. Like we don't necessarily need to go through the App Store. And if you do go through the App Store, there are other problems with that. Like if we want to charge our users for something and we don't want to pay Apple's, fee,
Ransom,
then this is a better way to go around that as well. So yeah, the web itself, domains, internet, IP, DNS, all those kind of open protocols, that is the most decentralized that you can get. So this is, I think, a good strategy for the Dash community and for anybody who's building a wallet or any kind of application. Build it as a progressive web app through web technologies. And then the app stores don't have any power over you, and the users get almost the exact same experience.
There's that word again, autonomy. So I guess it does speak to the fact that you want the software to be accessible to everybody, regardless of how any big San Francisco firm feels about it. You want it to be available. On a completely or almost completely different tangent, but related, the Bitcoin ETF recently was announced and accepted, and everybody in the Bitcoin community was happy. Are you one of the old school crypto guys who are kind of like, I'm not really that happy that we are now begging to be included in the legacy infrastructure?
I'm extremely happy that the ETF happened, because now we can just say it's done, and we don't have to keep looking for that as our savior. It's already done, and we'll just see where that project goes. Bitcoin. The over financialization of so many parts of our lives has destroyed our lives for the most part. So I'm not excited about, and I'm not pushing for Dash to have its own ETF or any other project. Like if you're not Bitcoin, don't worry. Like there's still a future for you. You just have to find other ways to provide value, and being a synthetic asset, that's not value to me. So I'm not jealous of Bitcoin's ETF status. I'm not trying to get Dash to have that status. I think that we need to create value in the real way, which is exchanging a monetary instrument for goods and services, and that monetary instrument being the incentive for a labor force to work to build those goods and services. Like that's the vision, is the circular economy, where you start not with dollars, but you start with your own human labor, creating ideas in your head, making those ideas come to reality, and then incentivizing your labor force through giving them these tokens, this coin, and then using that coin then to buy those goods and services. That's from straight to from labor to goods and services, with the coin in between. That's the goal. Right. And ETFs aren't going to do anything for that. Like nobody's in their ETF. Like it's just, yeah.
they're pumping our bags, and that's all that's the only value that they're adding. I'm aware of time because I know before we started I had said to you half an hour, and we're coming up on an hour, so I apologize for that, but I knew this would happen with you. I knew I've got so many more questions I want to ask as well. But what I want to do, I'm going to have to skip a few and then try and bribe you or do something to get you back on another show. I wanted to ask you, do you get a chance to pay attention to any of the other DAOs outside of Dash? Do you get a chance to look at what they're doing and try to implement any of their structures, or get a chance to help them by, I don't know, advising them on what they're doing?
I don't. My full time is dedicated to Dash right now, but part of the reason that I don't really look into a lot of other DAOs, I am interested in them, and when something comes across my podcast feed or my YouTube feed, for example, that is about a different DAO or your shows, I always watch to see what is going on in the broader space, but I don't look into it enough to know exactly what's going on in those areas, let alone actually participate in those areas, because it's just too much. I don't have time for it. But one of the reasons is I actually don't know of any, you can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't know of any layer one DAOs other than Dash. So Ethereum has thousands of DAOs, and Cosmos has thousands of DAOs, I'm sure, and Polkadot and all these other L1s, they have DAOs underneath them, but they themselves, Polkadot themselves, Cosmos itself, Ethereum itself is not a DAO, because you're not using layer one coins and having people be having open access to those layer one DAOs at the layer one level. It's always down one level. And I just don't see that as sustainable. And they're not really, these DAOs in other ecosystems, they're not DAOs that are working for a monetary instrument. And what I mean by that is Dash has the vision of being the monetary instrument, a global monetary instrument for goods and services, trying to target merchant adoption, for example. And that's the token that I want to work for directly, is a monetary instrument token. When you have these layer 2 DAOs, you're basically working for corporations. Like I know that's not exactly correct, but you're working for equity tokens. You're not working for a monetary instrument. I don't know if we probably don't have time to like delve into the details of what I mean by that, but I think some of your viewers might kind of know instinctively that, okay, when I'm working for, just you give me an example of a DAO.
Ape DAO, which is the Bored Apes.
Bored Ape DAO, and the token is what?
Ape. Token
Ape.
is a token called Ape. Yeah, it's a token on Ethereum.
Yeah, and so the Ape token, where can I take my Ape token and get actual real world goods and services? Nowhere really. So it's analogous to an equity, like a stock. So a lot of employees, they work and part of their compensation is in an equity token of the corporation. And that's fine and everything. It aligns incentives very well to the corporation. But I don't want my incentives aligned toward a specific corporation within an economy. I want my incentives aligned to the token of the economy itself, which in Dash's case is the Dash token. And in the fiat world is the US dollar token. Like I want to work for US dollars if I want to work in the US dollar economy. I want to work for Dash if I want to work for the Dash economy. Ape is not an economy. It's just an equity token. Whether that's an actual corporation or not, it doesn't matter. You can't actually buy goods and services with Ape tokens.
You've just massively upset a whole load of 8 maxis, by the way. So,
I'm sure.
so what I would say in response to that is that there are some of the Cosmos chains are uh, they're pretty much L1 DAOs. Some of the Cosmos chains are. So they do exist. And what I generally find within these DAOs is a bunch of people who are Rion Gull from 6 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 4 years ago. So what it seems like is happening, and this seems to be the disconnect, which was one of the main reasons why I started to do this show, and definitely wanted to have people like you on, voices with actual experience, is that often a lot of these DAOs go through the same problems that Dash has gone through, that after that Pivex went through, and now these DAOs all go through them. So in some DAO somewhere around the world, there's some bright spark thinking, do you know what I should do is develop another group of another development team to run alongside the core team, and I'm going to call it a incubator, and that sort of thing is happening. But none of these people come to Dash to learn from you, and vice versa, you don't venture out into those DAOs as well, which is, I guess, one of the reasons why we kind of miss shows like Amanda's show, which was more tech focused as opposed to speculation focused, which is what a lot of the things are now. So that's just what I would have said about that. What sorts of lessons do you think other DAOs could learn from the structure? I guess it's kind of difficult question. What kind of things do you think other DAOs could learn from what's happened with Dash? What sorts of things would you say are, I guess, good practices that Dash has done, or bad practices that other DAOs should avoid?
I really don't know how to answer that question, because I feel like I'm still learning so much myself. And I think that there are certain things that other communities have figured out much better than Dash. The vice versa works as well. There are things that Dash has figured out that other communities haven't yet. But I just think that we're all just trying to figure out how to build an economy, and how to make sustainable organizations, and we're all just still figuring it out. And the more I study, actually, to be a little bit even to bring in more controversy, is the more I study the economic systems in general, the more I realize that actually the fiat world has a lot figured out as well, that DAOs can learn from. Banking systems, for example, they are actually very economical systems. And only the main problems with them are not economical problems, they're ethical problems. And so if we could take the things that they're doing right in and how they've built enormous economies, like if you look at the US dollar system, by all metrics, it's an absolutely fantastically successful system. And it's getting more successful over time, because the dollar system is employing the biggest labor force, and it's growing and growing and growing as other less efficient fiat economies are collapsing and trying to go daddy dollar, save our economy. Venezuela and Argentina, they're all clamoring for dollars. Why are they clamoring for dollars? Because the dollar system has actually done a lot of things right. They've got a lot of things figured out. The Federal Reserve has got a lot of things figured out. But the problem with those systems is that they're unethical. They don't allow competition and for other people to do what they're doing, which is successful. They don't allow other people to do those successful things. And if we could do them on an equal playing field, we could be as successful and way more successful than them, because they have a monopoly on controlling labor forces, essentially in political boundaries. And if we could do the same thing without political boundaries and without the benefit of having monopolistic power, then we could actually start employing larger and larger labor forces to provide value in our economies. But it's probably not exactly how you expected me to answer that question. But yeah, I think that all of us DAOs have a lot to learn from the fiat economies of the world and do it in a more ethical way, which will, to bring it back to my two big goals in life, bring more peace and more prosperity to the world as we know it.
Rion Gull, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. Before I let you go, as we have, I've kept you for double what I said I would. Where can people go to find out more about you, more about Dash Incubator, and more about the project that you're working on, Dash?
Probably the easiest place is to just look up my Twitter X account. It's Rion Gull, RionGull. That's my first name and my last name, my real name. I'm not one of these guys that just goes by some anonymous username. I'm actually Rion Gull. And my tagline is Rion Sovereign, because I believe everybody should be a sovereign individual. And yeah, find me on Twitter, and then I'll help you. I have the same username on Discord as well. I do my primary communications is through Discord. So either of those places, same username.
Awesome. Rion, thank you so much for donating your time to Dow Watch Fireside. It's been absolutely amazing. Like loads of gems in there, and hopefully a lot of other DAO contributors from other DAOs are taking the time to listen, and hopefully they'll come into Dash at some point and pick your brains for ideas and their own things. I know you're a busy man, but you know, anything to further the mission of sovereignty for everyone else, which is what we're actually here for now that the numbers have gone up and we've got our ETF. So Rion, thank you very much. Before I let you go, is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off?
Nope, I think we covered it pretty well. So thanks for your time, and we're both doing the good work. So continue doing that, and all of you viewers, you're in the right place if you're working outside of traditional forced economic systems. So just keep going and keep learning the lessons.
Awesome. Rion, thank you so much.